Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're going to be continuing our talk about macroeconomics, and we're going to be talking about unemployment, inflation, deflation, and a little bit about business cycles. So first we want to kind of get a good definition of unemployment under our belt. Unemployment is the total number of adults age 16 or older willing to work and able to work and who are actively looking for work but have not found a job. The actively looking for work is kind of an important distinction. Unemployment creates a cost to the entire economy in terms of lost output, often ranging in the billions of dollars. The labor force is the individuals age 16 years or older who either have jobs or who are looking and available for jobs. The number of employed plus the number of unemployed makes up the labor force. And the unemployment rate is the percentage of the measured labor force that is unemployed. Here's kind of a nice graph over time of the unemployed as percentage of labor force, the unemployment rate. So the U.S. government reports the number of employed people include those working full-time and those working part-time. Since 2007, the share of employed people working part-time has increased to about 2%. This is kind of a recent trend, right? Here's another kind of pie chart distinguishing the different amount of people not in the labor force, unemployed, and employed. So there are different categories of individuals without work. There's a person who has lost their job, a person re-entering the labor force, a person leaving their job, and a new entrant. So a person who has lost their job is, well, someone who has been involuntarily terminated or who was laid off. And this is about 40 to 60% of the unemployed makeup. A re-entrant is an individual who has worked a full-time job before but left the labor force for some reason and has now re-entered looking for a job. This is about 20 to 30%. A job leaver is just someone who voluntarily quits. And a new entrant is an individual who has never worked a full-time job for 2 weeks or longer and is entering into the workforce for the first time. So the duration of unemployment can range, right, from obviously any amount of time. More than a third of job seekers find work within 1 month. Approximately another third find employment within a second month, and about 1/6 are still unemployed after 6 months. The average duration of unemployment has varied between 10 weeks to 20 weeks since about the mid-1960s. And discouraged workers are individuals who have stopped looking for a job because they're convinced they're not going to find a suitable one. Maybe they go and gain skills. Maybe they're just discouraged about the current economy and outlook. The labor force participation rate is the proportion of non-institutionalized working-age individuals who are employed or seeking employment. That's another important distinction. There are also different major types of unemployment: frictional unemployment, structural, and cyclical. There's also seasonal. So frictional unemployment occurs as a result from the fact that workers must search for the appropriate job offer, and this takes time, so they remain temporarily unemployed. This can also happen after being laid off or fired from a job, where it takes a little time to find another appropriate line of work or appropriate job. There's structural unemployment, which is the type of unemployment that happens over lengthy intervals, which results from skill mismatches. It also can come about from different policies that the government may put in on the labor market. You can maybe think about some type of job that was eliminated over time from the workforce, perhaps a milkman, or the guys who used to come around and sell ice for ice boxes. These people likely had to suffer from structural unemployment after their jobs were eliminated through technological change, and they likely had to reacquire new skills to re-enter the labor force. There's cyclical unemployment, which is the type of unemployment that results from business recessions or business cycles that occur when aggregate demand is insufficient to create full employment. And full employment is the arbitrary level of unemployment that corresponds to a normal friction in the labor market. And I know that we talked about seasonal unemployment being on the list, but it's not in the slides. So seasonal unemployment is something like if you were working at a snow resort, right, a ski resort, and summer came around. No one's really going to come to a ski resort without any snow in the summer, so you may be laid off for the season, and then next fall or winter comes around and you are employed again, and that's kind of seasonal unemployment. So there's a natural rate of unemployment, which is an unemployment rate that is estimated to prevail in the long-run macroeconomic equilibrium. It shouldn't really reflect cyclical unemployment, and when it's seasonally adjusted, it should include only frictional and structural unemployment. There's also, we want to talk about inflation and deflation in how it affects the macroeconomy. Inflation is a sustained increase in the average of all prices of goods and services in the economy, while deflation is just the opposite. The purchasing power is the value of money for buying goods and services. It varies with prices and income. For example, if your money income stays the same, but the price of one good goes up, your effective purchasing power falls. We also want to distinguish between nominal and real value. The nominal value is just the price you see. It's the price expressed in today's dollars. But we, in economics, really care about real value. It's the value expressed in purchasing power, adjusted for inflation. Measuring the rate of inflation requires a couple of things, right? We need a market basket, which is a representative bundle of goods and services. So just kind of some collection of things that represents what a household may buy. And some base year, which is some point of reference for comparison in price to other years. We also want to think about a pricing index, right, which is the cost of today's market basket of goods expressed as a percentage of the cost of the same basket of goods during a base year. And here's a nice formula for that. And here's a good little table showing how it's calculated. Then there are real-world price indexes that anyone can go check. You don't need a table to go and calculate it. It's right there for you. There's the CPI, the PPI, the GDP deflator, and the PCE, and we'll talk about those. The CPI is a statistical measure of weighted average of prices of a specified set of goods and services, like a basket, purchased by wage earners in urban areas. The market basket of goods and services of a typical consumer is basically what's measured. The PPI is a statistical measure of weighted average of prices of goods and services that firms produce and sell. It's used kind of as a short-run leading indicator before the CPI, right? And we may index for foodstuffs, intermediate goods, finished goods, right? These types of things. The GDP deflator is a price index that measures the change in prices of all new goods and services produced in the economy. The broadest measure of prices is really the GDP deflator. It reflects both price changes and the public's market response to those price changes. And the PCE is a statistical measure of average price using annually updated weights based on what consumers are spending each year. And it's the primary inflation indicator that the Fed uses. Here's a nice sort of graph over time of inflation. And you can kind of see that inflation used to kind of be sort of out of control. And certainly during wars it does spike. But if you kind of look down the road, it's been relatively steady. And that's because there's kind of a target. There's also anticipated inflation and unanticipated inflation. And anticipated inflation is the inflation rate that we kind of think will happen. And the unanticipated inflation is, well, it comes as a surprise. There's also different rates of interest, right? So the nominal rate of interest is the market rate of interest that you see, and the real rate of interest is the nominal rate of interest minus the anticipated rate of inflation. So here's kind of a nice way to calculate it. So how do we protect against inflation, right? Cost of living adjustments are clauses in contracts that allow for increases in specified nominal values to account for the changes in the cost of living, right? So if inflation is going up, prices are going up, you'd kind of want your contract, your wage, to maybe adjust for the cost of living. There are other ways. The resource cost of inflation is maybe repricing or menu costs. So consider, there is some inflation. Well, you have to update your prices. You have to print new price lists when there's inflation, and that can be pricey. We also want to talk a little bit about the business cycles and business fluctuations, and these are just the ups and downs in business activity that occur throughout sort of seasons or years or quarters, just throughout the economy over time. There's expansion, which is a business fluctuation in which the pace of national economic activity is kind of speeding up. A contraction, which is a business fluctuation where the opposite happens. There's, of course, a recession, which is a period of time during which the rate of growth of business activity is consistently less than its long-term trend. And a depression is just sort of a stronger recession. Here's a nice little graph of the business cycle. And here's a sort of real-world data printout of business cycles over time. So we also want to know just a little bit, kind of wrapping up, about leading indicators. Okay, well, we kind of want to know when downturns happen. Well, so if the reduction in the average work week happens, with the economic downturns often follow, right? Rise in unemployment and insurance claims, these also may be indicators, and so on. Right? Leading indicators are events that have been found to occur before changes in business activity.